Hey guys, I'm going to show you a couple things on Adobe Illustrator, give you a quick demonstration on how to use the tools. I would have given you a proper introduction on this already, so I'm not going to kind of go into depth too much on the specifics because we would have gotten that in class, but I'm just going to run through this so you can kind of see what I'm doing and try to give you a play-by-play. Just a couple setup things real quick. File, New, your name, Impact Arial Test Assignment, Profile Custom if it asks for artboards 1, size letter, units, inches, width 8.5, height 11. If this is not already down, put that down, color mode RGB. Okay, we'll get you a blank artboard. You need these dialog boxes open, your character, your stroke and transparency, layers, and swatches, which you can find here under Window. So layers, swatches, transparency. You also want type, character. If you click all of those, then you'll get all of these, which are ones that you may or may not need to do your assignment. On layer 1, we're going to create a background. We're going to use the rectangle tool to do that. Let's pick the color first of what we want our rectangle to be. I'm going to go down here to swatches where my fill is. Start with the yellow base, but double click on it. We're going to get, I want it to be a little more golden. So I'll drag that down. You could just straight up copy these numbers if you wanted to, or you can find something similar. I'm not going to be too picky on that. Click OK. I'm going to click on this area. This is stroke. I don't want a stroke. I don't want an outline, so I'm going to click this that says none. That's the white with the bar in it. And then put fill on top. I'm going to line my cursor up so that both lines are green. It may take a little bit of finagling. So I got there. That means it's right flush with the edge. Drag that out. So it snaps into place there. Let go, and I have a nice yellow background. I'm going to lock this layer over here in my layers thing. That way I can't make any changes to this because I just want it to be like kind of like a blank background. Just keeping in mind if I wanted to highlight it, I could unlock it and click that. That would allow me to make changes over here. Or I could hit the I button, which would make it disappear. It doesn't go away completely, it's just kind of out of sight, which is a nice way to kind of size things up if you need to look at things without other things being in the way. All right, so once that's done, I'm going to go to my type tool. That's just the plain T, not a T in any other thing, just the plain T. But as you can see, I can't really do much of this layer because it's locked. So in order to make type, I need to create a new layer. And you can name these layers, so like I could double click on that and name it background. And this is a good way to keep yourself organized, and I'm going to name this layer Impact because this is where I'm going to put my impact type. So I'm going to take my tool here. I'm going to drag it out, and I can start typing. I can type Impact, but as you can see, it's not in the Impact font. So I'm going to highlight it and go to my character window here. Click over here. Find Impact. You can also do a search for it if that's easier. And now it becomes Impact, although it's rather small. So I'm going to go over here and beef that up a little bit. Don't forget that if you did want to make some subtle changes as far as like the kerning, you could do that. You could make it tall. You could make it wide. And all of those nice things in between. But if you want it to be basic, 100% or 0 or auto will be kind of like your baseline. So now I want to make some changes to this font. It's going to be a lot easier to do that if I create an outline. So I'm turning the font into actual just shapes that are easily managed. I'm going to go over here to my arrow tool, click on this, go to type, create outlines. So now I have paths for all of these rather than just the typeface. It's a little bit easier to manage. I'm going to drag it up here to the edge, and I want to scale it out You can hold shift to keep it proportional, which is kind of nice. But I'm kind of doing a little mental math here, and I think I want to make it a tiny bit taller. But keep in mind that I wanted it to be flush, and it's not. See that little yellow edge? So click on that, and I can drag that up. Okay, great. But I do want to make it a little bit longer than it normally is. So I'm going to highlight it. I'm just going to pull it down. Or let's make it smaller. No, that's good. I like it like that. I want to repeat this font below it, but I kind of want to do something a little more interesting. So I'm going to repeat it, but I'm going to reflect it, which means I'm going to make it like a mirror image. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to go to Object, Transform, Reflect. I want it to go back and forth. I want it to reflect in a vertical way, so that it's like looking into a mirror. I can preview this to make sure I'm clicking the right thing. Yes, that's what I want it to look like, but I don't want to change this one. I just want to make a copy of this one that is reflected. So I'm just going to click copy. Now I have a copy that I can move around, and I'm going to drag this sucker down until it overlaps. It's a little bit too overlappy for me, so I'm going to pull it, nudge it down. And nudging means just moving it slightly, and I can actually use my arrow keys for that. I'm going to get it right there on the edge. Okay. And click that. I can actually click that and do Control D. Nope, that didn't work. Object, and I can just do it again. Transform, reflect, make a copy. Pull that down. A little bit over, so I'm going to nudge that. Nudge it up, nudge it over. Alright. And I'm going to do it one more time. By now you may have noticed that there are maybe a couple shortcuts, oops, that I could have taken. I didn't take those shortcuts, but that's okay. And I'm going to drag this one down here to leave just a little space. Now, just because that's hanging off the edge there doesn't mean I'm going to see it. Because it's not on the artboard, so it would automatically get cut off. But to make things, clean, we could trim that, but don't worry about that now. The problem is I want this gap here, but I want the font to be completely, I don't want it to be cut off. I don't want it to be cropped. So I'm going to highlight all of this, and I can do Control A to highlight all, or I can just drag over all of the objects. And if I want to move this around, I can, do like a two-finger mouse situation, or I can also go to this hand, which will move this around. Because what I want to do is click here, and I kind of just want to shorten everything up a tiny bit, which is actually going to make it closer to its original kind of factory preset, which is kind of a faster way for me to do that. So now I've got this kind of like nice little gap here, and this is kind of the area that I want to put my Arial narrow in. So now just going back to the layers, notice I have my background layer of my rectangle, and I have my impact layer. If I click this arrow, it's actually going to open it up to here. Now one thing I want you to notice is that these are all in groups. If I go that, it's actually going to give me every single letter. So if I wanted to single out a letter, I could, but the problem is because they're in a group, I can't really do that. So like if say I wanted to make a change to just that P, if I click on the P, I click on them all. If I did want to make a change to just that P, I could go to Object, Ungroup, and then I can kind of individually mess with these. But I'm going to group them back together for now, just so that I can make quick changes. So let me collapse that. I've got 2 layers. I want to make another layer for Arial just to keep it organized. So I'm going to go to New Layer, and this one I'm going to call Arial. Okay, click that. And let's put some more type in there. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't really matter. Although I could lock this just to be sure that I don't accidentally mess with anything. It's probably a good idea. See how that cursor's longer than the box I drag? That means it's too big. So I'm going to go here and resize my font just so that I can see it when I'm writing. But let's see, Arial. Well, that's not Arial, so let's highlight it and let's make it Arial. All right, now. If I get out of here but I want to change the type, since it's still in a type box, I haven't changed it to an outline yet, I can go to my type tool and just hover over that and click on that, and that'll allow me to change the typeface. After you make an outline, like say I have this impact, right? It's an outline. If I wanted to suddenly change all that impact font to like, I don't know, Comic Sans, I couldn't do it because it's outlines. But as long as it's in a text thing, as long as I haven't created outlines yet, I can make whatever font changes I want to it. So I have it in Arial, but I want to change the, like Arial is kind of boring. So let's see what Arial bold looks like. Let's try bold italic. What about Arial narrow? Let's do Arial narrow. So I'm going to go here, click Arial narrow. And now I am going to create an outline. Type outline. I'm going to drag that flush. Check my work. A little too much. So I have a little bit of an issue here because the C is higher than the T in this case. So that's going to be just like a little bit of a design thing that I could problem solve, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. I'm going to drag that out. I can hold Shift to constrain its properties, but I do want it to stretch. So let's check to see how that looks. Why don't we just hover it in the middle. Let's make it a little more intentional. Let's just put it right in the middle. I think for like creative purposes, I'm going to put this here. In the middle-ish. And I'm going to do another copy reflection. So object, transform, reflect, copy, drag it over. Because I kind of want to have this like butterfly symmetry effect. Now that was... I like that, although it's not centered. All right, so let's just say that that's my design. I would definitely rework this if it were my design, but for the sake of this exercise, let's just say that. One thing I just want to go back and show you, if I wanted to make that really, really precise, I could do the same thing, object, transform, reflect, copy, and then as I drag it, if I hold Shift, it won't go down. I can drag over and it won't, like I won't be able to go down or up, which means it's going to stay perfectly in line. Shift's kind of one of those like nice little magic tools. that will do that. Okay, so let's just say that that's my final design as far as like the typeface goes. I've represented both fonts. I've kind of put them together in an interesting way. I want to add like one more bit of pop to this. So I'm going to lock my Arial there and I'm going to unlock impact. I think what I'm going to do is add a little bit of a pop of color to this. So I'm going to click on my impacts and I can hold shift and click them. That way they're all selected. And I'm going to go to object ungroup. Now they're all kind of individual letters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to color these. Let's give them like a bright red. And I'm going to color the ones but I don't like that. So I can click undo. Let's go this way. Let's go backwards. So I think what I'm going to do is try to keep it so that the red ones are going forward. So playing a little bit on symmetry here. So if you read it from top to bottom, or bottom to top, it would actually line up. So now I have an interesting composition that has pop of color. It shows both my fonts. I'm not too thrilled with what I'm doing here, but for now this is good. This is a good exercise for you guys. One thing that I'm going to need you to do, because of this is just like a technical situation, but our printers will not print bleeds, which means they're not going to print all the way to the edge. There's always going to like leave a white mark, but we don't want to compromise our design, right? So what we're going to do is highlight everything, which means we need to unlock all of our layers. And we can highlight everything 3 different ways. We can do Control All, which will highlight everything. We can click and drag, which will highlight everything. Or we can go over here and just click, shift, click, shift, click. Hold shift down while I click all 3 of those. Either of those will work to highlight them all. Then we're going to go to the corner here and we're going to hold shift and alt. Holding shift is going to constrain the properties so we don't stretch or skew anything. Alt is going to make it's going to scale it, but it's going to scale it from the center. So it's going to make it smaller on all sides, not just one. So shift alt, drag it in, and that way we have a border. However, like I told you, this is an artboard, which means that only information that we put in here in layers is actually going to print. So this would be like a weird printing situation unless we create another white background. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to make sure that this layer is at the very bottom, so I'm going to drag it down here, and I'm simply just going to create, oops, Control Z to erase, or to undo. And I'm going to make sure that that is filled with white with no stroke, and we're done. So now I have my design. Now you can see a couple little technical flaws here. The C is a tiny bit over the edge, but that is probably just something that we're going to have to deal with because it's not too big that we have to make a fuss over it. And in fact, it kind of looks a little bit interesting, and if the printer picked it up, it kind of like, you could really play with that. See if the printer picks it up. It may look actually cool, but we're going to leave that for now. I went a little too far there. If you go too far on the undo, just go to edit, redo. Alright, so that's what we wanted. There's our design. We're ready to save it. We're ready to export it. So File, Save is just going to save it, but it's saving it as an Adobe Illustrator file, which is good. You want to first save it as an AI because this is where it's going to keep all of your information. So save it into wherever it is that you save it. I'm just going to save it on my desktop here. You save it where you need to save it. Then, for the sake of submitting this, I want you to save as and change this to Adobe PDF.